The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to the webinar titled Healthcare Ransomware Breaches, How You Can Avoid Being the Next Victim. My name is Anupam Sahai. I'm the CEO and the co-founder of ePHI Incorporated. In terms of my background, I've been in the industry for 25 plus years in various areas related to healthcare IT, cloud computing, security, and compliance. So here is the agenda for today. We will start out by talking about ransomware, define it, what is it. We'll talk about some of the recent developments that have been taking place, and it's a pretty scary scenario. So we'll cover that. And then we'll talk about what are the best practices that you can adopt to avoid being the next victim. And at the end, we will talk about ePHI, which is an automated solution for detecting, preventing ransomware attacks, and a lot more. We will also have time for Q&A at the end. So as we are going through the presentation, would appreciate if you can type in your questions in the questions area of the GoToWebinar. We will pick it up at the end, and we will also be mailing out a copy of the webinar recording, so that you should get that. If you need a copy of the slides, please reach out to me. I will send out display my contact information at the end of the webinar. So let's look at this ransomware buzz that's going around, and it's actually a huge problem. And you can see some of the recent incidents that have happened with pretty regularity. Hollywood Hospital got breached in February 2016. They had to pay $17,000 for that one particular incident to get access to all the information. In March and April, the attacks have continued, and as you'll see, the attacks are actually much more frequent, affecting a huge number of computers and organizations. So what happens in a ransomware breach? Let's talk about that. So the first thing is it's a breach. It's basically allows unauthorized access to critical information inside your company, and it essentially prevents you from using your PC or device or specific files. And they are also sometimes called the FBI money pack or the FBI virus, because of the messages that are displayed, which can be misleading. So if you look at some of the messages that typically get displayed, you see here that it's got the official official logo. It kind of talks about that your OS is locked down, you got to pay a fee, and the fee could vary. It could vary between $300 per computer all the way to $2,000 per computer. And typically the payment is in Bitcoin currency. And if you have thousands of computers, the numbers can easily add up to a pretty significant number. So the attacker's malware essentially locks down the computer systems, encrypts all the files, and they demand a ransom with a screen that looks like on the right-hand side. And obviously, the quickest way to restore, not the prescribed way, but the quickest way to restore the systems is to pay the ransom, obtain the decryption key, and payment is, as I said, either paid in Bitcoin currency, which is difficult to trace back to actual people, or sometimes they make you complete service. If you don't pay, then you lose all the data in 72 hours. So a number of ransomware victims, in fact, 40% of them decide to pay the attackers, which seems to be the only way out. So how does it work? So the ransomware has a few scenarios that they typically leverage, and this is going to change and evolve with time, but I'm going to take you through a couple of scenarios that typically is used by the attackers. So first thing is that you receive an email from a friend. It's got an executable attached, looks like an simple document. You click on it and that downloads some malware that takes over your computer, and essentially you're held hostage till you get the decryption key. Scenario number two is a little bit more sophisticated, and again, mind you, these tools are available out there for anybody to buy, and these use well-known vulnerabilities or weaknesses in the system, and they take control of your system through exploiting of these vulnerabilities, and Angler is one such vulnerability that is exploited by the attackers. So this is a huge challenge, and as I said, the number of attacks on healthcare facilities actually is phenomenal. 66% of all breaches targeted healthcare in 2015, and the reason is very simple. The value of the healthcare record is 10x more valuable, 10 times more valuable than anything else that's out there. And in 2015 alone, 112 million records were breached. So ransomware is a more sophisticated form of a breach where the attackers are able to get the payments made or realized very quickly. But any kind of breach, the intention of any kind of a breach is to sell the information in the underground marketplace and thereby make illegal money. Some of the number of complaints that the FBI received in 2015, it's a lot, 2,453. That's roughly about 8 a day, and that's a big number. So every day, 8 facilities or 8 victims of ransomware happened. And some of the other statistics here is mind-boggling. 40% of victims essentially agreed to pay, although everybody prescribes that they should not be paying any money. And 750 computers were detected to be infected by ransomware programs. And a significant portion of them were targeted by encryption ransomware. So these are not small numbers. These are big numbers that can potentially affect any company. And as it stands right now, the attackers seem to be making a lot of money. Ransomware, by the way, has also been denoted as the biggest threat of 2016. It's been growing year over year from 2013 to 2014. It grew by 4,000%, and from 2014 to 2015, the same amount. So it's been growing 40x every year. And this year, it's the biggest threat that every business needs to be careful about. So let's get into some more details around how does this ransomware work and what can you do to prevent it. So the first thing that I want to define a term, which is vulnerability, which is really a weakness that allows an attacker to break in and compromise critical information. And it's really a function of the known weakness in the system. Is the ability of the attacker to access and exploit the flaw. And that's key, because if you have weaknesses that can be exploitable, there will be attackers out there who will do it. And you can see here some of the recent exploits that have happened by compromising these well-known vulnerabilities. These are cryptic numbers. These are vulnerability information that's available in a database, and these vulnerabilities typically are combined in pairs where they exploit one vulnerability to get in and use the other vulnerability to escalate privileges, thereby taking charge of the computer. And so these vulnerabilities are essentially the gateways to attackers who are getting in and then taking control of your systems. And the challenge is that these vulnerabilities and the attack scenarios will change and will continue to change and evolve. So In 2016, these 4 vulnerabilities were the top vulnerabilities that were exploited. In 2015, the vulnerabilities, the ransomware vulnerabilities were very different. So again, the idea here is that you might do a good job of securing the vulnerabilities today, but there's a need to do continuous monitoring and continuous vulnerability scanning to make sure that you are not vulnerable at any point in time that can be exploited. So let's talk about best practices. So what ransomware attackers are doing is really locking out your data. And it's important that you have a backup of your data to a non-connected system. And what I mean by that is that if your computer gets encrypted and locked down, and if you're connected on a network with your backup device, the attacker or the attacker software, malware, can get access to the backup device too, and thereby encrypt that. So it's important that you back up your data, take it off the internet, take it off your local network, and keep it there so that it doesn't get a chance to get infected with this malware. Don't pay ransomware, because there's no guarantee even after you pay them that that they will unlock the system. And typically, FBI recommends to let them to notify them, and in many cases, FBI has in fact negotiated to make sure that they will unlock the data before the payment is made. So it's a complicated process of negotiating that, and the general recommendation is not to pay ransomware because you're not sure that this will result in anything. It's important to be HIPAA compliant, wherein you're looking at policies, procedures, vulnerabilities, all your security controls to be in place, and then to make sure that you're continuously monitoring it to maintain your risk, security, and compliance posture. And that leads me to the most important part to prevent ransomware is to perform regular security scanning. Weekly, if not at least monthly. And this is because there are new vulnerabilities that are coming up. Use a tool that is keeping up with all the known discovered vulnerabilities. There are 35,000 such vulnerabilities that are out there, and you want to use a scanning tool that is able to stay on top of it and alert you and notify you if things are getting out of shape. And then make sure that the vulnerabilities that are identified, such as OS or software or antivirus software that is getting out of date, is patched and are kept up to date, because that's how you keep away the attackers from exploiting the vulnerabilities. Otherwise, you just know of the problems without fixing it. And then these are some of the more common ways that attackers get in, which is to send you emails with attachments, or when you go to a website which has got malware that you unknowingly download because you want to look at that website or some contents of that website. So it's important that these are drilled into the organizational folks as part of a policy to ensure that everybody is educated, aware, and trained on these basic rules to prevent ransomware, malware to get into the company. And a lot of people use intrusion detection systems or some application level filtering to take care of this. But the more important thing is that if there is a suspicious process, it's important to turn off the computer, take it offline, and make sure that it's not able to communicate with the internet, because what it does is once it takes over the computer, it will contact via the internet to one of these torrent IP addresses to download an encryption key. So you need to make sure that these some of these known torrent IP addresses are blocked, and that the affected computer is not able to communicate over the internet, so that you're preventing the encryption from happening. Now, this is if you can do that in a timely fashion, this is the recommendation. So we've talked about the problem, we talked about the best practices, and the question is, how do I go about doing all of this in a manner that is simple, automated, and so ePHI is a cloud SaaS-based solution, software as a service solution, that allows you to automate the entire process of detecting and then fixing, remediating, and then do continuous monitoring. So when you subscribe to ePHI Security Manager, what you get is a screen like you see here. It's a dashboard that gives you your current snapshot, organizational snapshot for security vulnerabilities and threats that might be impacting you. So it's a cloud-based deployment model. You're able to use the tool to assess and maintain your HIPAA risk and security compliance posture. You can schedule scans, vulnerability scans, whether you're scanning internal assets or external assets, and you can scan up to 35,000 vulnerabilities, the entire national database of vulnerabilities, to know whether any of your systems are vulnerable. And if so, it will guide you through a process of fixing all the important updates that you need to apply. So it's a completely continuous monitoring system. We call it, and it's part of a suite. The ePHI RSC suite comprises of other elements, but we're talking about the security manager, and the solution has won multiple awards from industry analysts. So what the solution does is we support what we call is a diagnose, cure, protect cycle. And the diagnose, cure, protect cycle essentially allows you to diagnose the problems, whether there are vulnerabilities that are found, we guide you through a process of remediation, and then get into a continuous monitoring mode so that you're staying on top of any changes as things happen. And you can schedule scans on a regular basis. You can say, I want to scan every week or every month, and the real-time dashboard and the reports and alerts and notifications will guide you through a process of continuous peace of mind by ensuring that all your known vulnerabilities and threats are detected and fixed. So I want to just quickly give you a snapshot of what kind of reports and dashboards are available. So the security manager will give you a list of top vulnerabilities. It'll tell you the severity of every vulnerability that is found, whether it's critical, and then how many of them affect software, how many of them affect the hardware. And for each vulnerability, you'll have complete guidance on what to do and how to fix the problem. So here in this example, it tells you how many hardware devices and how many software devices are critical. 6 of them are critical. In this case, 5 are critical, so that you can focus on the ones that are more important. And then for every system, it will give you a list of all issues that were discovered and how many software hardware problems were found. And then it will give you a time estimate with the prioritized view, so that you're able to focus on the top vulnerabilities which have the highest risk exposure, so that you're able to prioritize and get it done. So we make it very simple for you to assess, to diagnose the problems. We guide you through a remediation process, and then help you remediate to do continuous monitoring after that. So in summary, ransomware is a huge problem. It's the biggest threat in 2016, and no organization is completely clear. If they're not looking into this, I urge you folks to look into this, as the number of organizations that are getting impacted are huge. And if you're not careful, you could be the next victim. And some of the best practices that I mentioned, the 10 steps, are critical for you to evaluate, assess where you stand today, and then put together a best practices policies and tools and automation tools to implement and make sure that you're not vulnerable to any ransomware attack. And of course, most importantly, back up your data which is not connected to the network, and use an automated tool like ePHI for doing regular security scanning to make sure that once you scan it, you're able to detect the problems and fix them, and repeat that process in a continuous fashion. And again, if you look at HIPAA compliance requirements, security scanning is a critical element of that, and HIPAA compliance risk management tool like ePHI provides that end-to-end automation needed for taking care of your all of your risk, security, and compliance needs. With that, let me pause here and see whether there are any questions. You can type in your questions in the questions area of GoToWebinar, and we will take it up after that. Okay, so the question is ransomware really a breach? Yes, it is actually a very severe form of breach. Typically in a breach, when attackers are able to, and attackers could be, by the way, insiders or outsiders, when the attackers are able to break in, they exploit a vulnerability and they steal the information, and then they make money by selling the information in an underground market. The difference with ransomware is that they're getting bolder and more aggressive in that they break into the organization and then they lock down the systems to force you to pay right away, and then they decrypt the data or blow up the data. So it's a severe form of cyber terrorism or cyber kidnapping, if you wish, that that is taking place now. Please type in your questions in the Q&A area of GoToWebinar, and we will take it up. So the question was, how is ePHI priced from a ransomware perspective? So the ePHI, as I said, is able to automate the process of security vulnerability scanning. We will scan all your IT assets, and we can tell you that whether there are any vulnerabilities that are critical, that can be exploited by attackers. And the pricing for ePHI is really a function of the number of devices that will be scanned. And it's basically based on that, and you can do unlimited scanning per year once you buy the subscription for ePHI Security Manager. Please type in your questions in the Q&A section of the GoToWebinar, and we will take it up. Here is my contact information in case you would like to reach out to me, or if you have any additional questions that you would like to share, please feel free to reach out. If you need the slides, then that's something that we can make available as well. As I mentioned earlier, we will have a copy of the recording available and shared with you shortly in the next 2 to 3 business days. We highly appreciate you taking the time and joining the webinar today. We would love to get your feedback on the contents of the webinar or any other specific topics that you would like us to cover. Have a great day. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye.